The Armenia and Azerbaijan conflict is one of the longest-running conflicts in history. It is also one of the most complex conflicts. However, this time around, the threat level is significantly higher due to Turkey's direct involvement. My research led me to surprising findings that range from organized kidnappings of Armenians and Assyrians within the borders of Turkey, an indirect call to jihad by Erdogan as a religious tool to recruit Syrian and Iraqi terrorist mercenaries, many of whom are from terrorist organizations as designated by the United States, and Turkey closing off its airspace in an attempt to limit the humanitarian aid from getting to desperate Armenians. The list is significantly longer, and the findings will be covered in detail in the documentary. Finally, I interviewed Armenians and Azeris to understand both sides of the equation. These interviews are not included in part 1 of this documentary. I will include these interviews in separate videos and in specific parts of the documentary going forward. I urge you to watch with an open mind and engage in a polite manner in the comment section below. Thank you, and now on to the feature presentation. The copyright laws of the United States recognizes a fair use of copyrighted content. Section 107 of the United States Copyright Act states the following.
To our elected leaders here in the United States, it is high time to condemn Azerbaijan and Turkey's aggression. It is time to stop our leaders from waiving Section 907 so that our taxpayer dollars cannot and will not fund these murderous regimes who export their genocidal policies abroad.
Early Sunday morning, September 27th, Azerbaijan launched a large-scale attack on Nagorno Karabakh, including the targeting and shelling of civilian-populated areas. To get a solid idea of what this conflict is all about, I decided to go to the protests taking place in front of the Azerbaijan consulate in West Hollywood, California. After asking around, I was pointed out to Alex Galitsky.
Alex Galitsky, Communications Director, Armenian National Committee of America Western Region. What we've seen from the mainstream media, unfortunately, has been this resort to calling on both sides to cease their hostilities, refusing to directly attribute the initial act of aggression to Azerbaijan, despite the clear evidence that Azerbaijan was responsible. Anyone who's been monitoring the situation, even in the last weeks and months since Azerbaijan last engaged in an act of aggression against Armenia in July, but also dating back to 2016, the 4-day war, when Azerbaijan attempted the full-scale invasion of Artsakh, right back to the 1990s war, Azerbaijan has always been the aggressor in this situation. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen Azerbaijan and Turkey contract terrorist mercenaries from Syria to come and fight on the front line against Artsakh. We've seen the partial mobilization of the Azerbaijani military reserves. We've seen Azerbaijan requisitioning civilian vehicles for military use. And throughout the course of this war, starting on the 27th, we have seen coordinated assaults on multiple fronts of Artsakh, as well as cyber attacks on Armenian and diasporan Armenian official government pages and organization pages and humanitarian pages to simultaneously block out the Armenian community from being able to support the homeland and get accurate information on what is happening. In addition to that, Azerbaijan has banned most social media in its country and has banned the accreditation of additional journalists, so the only information coming out of the country is from Azerbaijani government sources. What this all says is that Azerbaijan has been planning this assault for a while. It's not something that happened overnight. It was definitely not something that occurred in retaliation to what Armenia has allegedly done. This was something that Azerbaijan initiated. So our call to the international community, and particularly the media, is to act as the fourth estate. hold Azerbaijan accountable, hold our leaders accountable to ensure that Azerbaijan is not allowed to get away with murder, because that is exactly what has been happening for the last 2 decades since the end of the war. Azerbaijan has been granted impunity by the international community out of the refusal of the international community and international media to accurately attribute Azerbaijan as the only party to this conflict to blame for acts of aggression and the instigation of warfare.
This is more serious than I thought. It was a lot to take in, and already I was feeling that I have a lot of homework to do. And I was right. This was not going to be just an average 15-minute video. Early Sunday morning, September 27th, 2020, Azerbaijan, emboldened by full Turkish support, launched a large-scale attack on Nagorno Karabakh, as it's known to the international community, or the Republic of Artsakh, as it's known to Armenians around the world. Nagorno Karabakh, or Artsakh, is an autonomous region that is currently inhabited entirely by 90% plus ethnic Armenians. Both sides blame the other for instigating hostilities, but as always, the truth is the first casualty of war. This time around, both sides are prepared for an all-out, long-term battle. This conflict is unlike any other you have ever heard of. It is frozen in a Soviet time vacuum, where the pens of now deceased Soviet lawmakers have condemned the real victims, the citizens of Armenia and Azerbaijan, to a prolonged war. A war in which if one party were to lose entirely, it would permanently shift the balance of power in the region and risk a world war. Sounds far-fetched? Not really. Let's dive deeper to understand how we arrived here. In 1921, the Soviet Union's Bolsheviks, who had recently conquered both Armenia and Azerbaijan, established a special bureau headed by Stalin to subordinate the Caucasus into the Soviet Union. After this, Yerevan resorted to diplomacy with the Soviet Union to gain control over Nakhchivan, Zangezur, and Karabakh. These 3 regions have previously been recognized by the international community as part of Azerbaijan. Armenia requested that Moscow revise its plans and implement territorial adjustments, and the USSR obliged. After pinning up the territorial claims of both Armenia and Azerbaijan, the committee ruled that due to economic, historical, demographic, and political reasons, the Karabakh region was to remain part of Azerbaijan SSR. But the quarrel over territory did not end there. In 1923, Stalin felt the need to revise the region's balance to show good faith towards the Ottomans and the ethnic Turkic Azerbaijanis. So Stalin implemented additional territorial changes that gave birth to the Nagorno Karabakh autonomous region within the borders of Azerbaijan. The Nagorno Karabakh boundaries were explicitly drawn to establish an Armenian majority population within Azerbaijan. Moreover, the Zangezur region was transferred over to Armenia despite the majority of its inhabitants being Azerbaijani. This stroke of a pen also transferred Nakhchivan into an autonomous exclave within Azerbaijan. As you can see, the situation became a cluster. Stalin seemed to have done this as a sign of good faith towards the Ottomans, who were concerned about their ethnically related kin in Azerbaijan. But these findings led me to believe that Stalin had ulterior motives that, in recent events, have proven to be very forward-thinking and highly strategic at best. With a stroke of a pen, the Soviet Union has pinned both countries in a loop of never-ending battle for the Nagorno-Karabakh region, which indirectly allows the Soviet Union to block any potential Ottoman expansion attempt into the eastern Anatolia or southern Caucasus. Armenia's territorial dispute results were Stalin's version of a defensive Trojan horse capable of reacting as a defensive time capsule in the future. Think of it as Stalin's defensive promise to his Christian Armenian ally and the highly probable future Russian influence in the region. I say highly probable future Russian influence because at that time, Soviet Union lawmakers assumed that the Soviet Union would last for a very, very long time. Recently, Turkey's actions prove that Erdogan sees and understands this very well. This is most likely why Azerbaijan violated the recent 2020 ceasefire within hours after its declaration. Due to Azerbaijan's war track record, where the military has proved that it is incapable of doing Ankara's bidding on its own, Erdogan got Turkey involved and began militarily backing Aliyev. Whether the job is conquering Armenian land in Zanzibar, vanquishing and humiliating the Armenians in battle for the first time in a decade in order to link up with Turkey and then move on to Turkmenistan, whatever the case may be, Erdogan and Aliyev's alliance is in dire need of the military campaign against Armenia to raise their recently diminished favorability ratings in their respective countries. After their territorial dispute was resolved by the Soviet Union, both Caucasus republics began shuffling their ethnic identities into their corresponding borders, mostly through deportations. It was not long before a region that was once home to multicultural communities gradually transformed into distinct modern nation-states that would grow progressively to mistrust each other. As the Soviet Union crumbled in late 1991, Nagorno Karabakh declared independence. Consequently, the conflict exploded into a full-scale war, Armenia and the new Nagorno Karabakh Republic of Artsakh on one side, Azerbaijan on the other. Consequently, the Armenians quickly realized that they had more to lose if they did not take the initiative and get on the offensive and annex the area surrounding the Armenian enclave in Nagorno-Karabakh to establish a defensive buffer against Azerbaijan. The Armenians proved to be tactical in their approach to their predicament. They pushed their strategic advantage and established a defensive buffer around their Armenian kin enclave in Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan understood this very well, and over the next couple of decades, they will continue trying to conquer the Nagorno-Karabakh region, but to no avail. Zangezur's mountainous terrains make a natural defensive line that is impossible to penetrate if the Ottomans were ever to get any pan-Turkic ambitions then and in the future. Stalin's tactical thinking seems to have been paying off for the last several decades. However, recent Turkish involvement and provocations can potentially sway the outcome in favor of Azerbaijan, or both Turkey and Azerbaijan, depending on the motives behind the attacks. Pan-Turkism is a movement that proposes the unification of all countries with predominant ethnic Turkic historical and cultural similarities with modern-day Turkey. The most remotely possible scenario today would be if Turkey links up with Azerbaijan and then Turkmenistan. The current Armenian fears of modern pan-Turkic ambition are becoming more of a reality with each day that NATO continues to turn a blind eye to Turkey's erratic behavior. Turkey's recent actions against neighboring nations and fellow NATO members seems to uphold Ottoman ideals. Conservative when it comes to dealing with internal politics, yet aggressive when it comes to the external. Recently, Armenia claimed that Turkey is aiding Azerbaijan in its assault on Artsakh by contracting radical Sunni mercenaries from Syria and Iraq.
اسمعوا صوت القصف.
ما نقدر نصور يعني الجيش وهذا من طيناهم وهاي لان ممنوع زين.
الله اكبر.
هذا العلم العراقي. العلم العراقي بيصور مو تقدر. هذا العلم العراقي.
الله اكبر.
هذا راية الله اكبر والعلم الاذري.
شنو طلعت هاي والله ما اعرف.
The previous video was self-explanatory. In this video, shot by actual jihadis, you can see two Israeli-made Hailstorm military vehicles recently sold to Azerbaijan by Israel. You can also see the ex-ISIS mercenaries wearing camo worn by Azerbaijani border guard units. The weather in this video matches that of the region as that on the date of this video's release. The translation from Arabic into English is nothing but comical. Two days later, French President Emmanuel Macron confirmed it.
We have information that indicates with certainty that Syrian fighters have left the theatre of operations, fighters of jihadist groups passing through Gaziantep to join the theatre of operations in Nagorno Karabakh. This is a new, very serious fact that is game-changing.
Also, recently Canada has halted exporting drone technology to Turkey's defense industry after the Armenian Ministry of Defense uncovered Canadian tech and Azerbaijani Turkish-made drones it shot down over its territory. When Stalin drew the Nagorno Karabakh region lines, he simultaneously showed good faith to Azerbaijan and the Ottoman Empire while giving Armenia the chance to survive and become a long-term defensive ally of Russia. This move effectively turned Armenia into a defensive line against pan-Turkism. Thus, if the Ottoman Empire were to ever get wild ambitions to attempt and add Azerbaijan and/or Turkmenistan into its fold, it would first have to cross the impenetrable mountainous defensive line of battle-hardened Armenians and lose enough men and equipment in the process that it will demoralize their advance and lead to the eventual failure of the pan-Turkic endeavor. Over the years, this has proven to be more effective towards Azerbaijan than Turkey, since Turkey can never afford to be caught directly assaulting Armenians again after the Armenian genocide that still to this day Turkey refuses to acknowledge, and that is most likely due to the fact that they will have to pay reparations for a very long time, and Turkey's current economy cannot afford that. In 1988, the Nagorno Karabakh Autonomous Oblast voted to unify with Armenia. That did not sit well with the Azerbaijani ethno-nationalists who began to target Armenians who still resided within Azerbaijan. Once again, tensions began to increase between the two nations. Armenia deported Azerbaijanis living within Armenia, and the Soviet media outlets further fanned the flames. These events led to citizens dying on both sides from both countries. The worst point of tensions came about with the formal collapse of the Soviet Union in December of 1991. Between 1988 to 1992, conflicts along the Azerbaijani and Nagorno-Karabakh border escalated, with the Armenians almost always emerging as the victors. Neighboring nations would step in to mediate a ceasefire time and time again, but to no avail. Azerbaijan wanted and still wants what it sees as its territory back. This is mainly due to the international community still recognizing the Nagorno Karabakh region to be part of Azerbaijan. However, the Nagorno Karabakh region is almost entirely inhabited by ethnic Armenians who to this day wish to unify with Armenia despite the international community still recognizing the region as part of Azerbaijan. In 2016, Azerbaijan attempted yet again to seize land from Nagorno Karabakh, but they again found themselves retreating shortly after. Armenia sees itself as the de facto protector of Artsakh, and it is intent on defending it at all costs. So with all that said, what makes the September 27th, 2020 version of this war one that demands the international community's immediate attention?
Արևն արդեն մոտեցել է մայրամուտին Դաշտում անմեր լռություն էր տիրում ու միայն վերքերը վիրավոր հողի հուշում էին որտեղ պատերազմ է գնում Խրամատի մեջ մի պատանի զինվոր Կարոտով նամակ էր գրում Նա հիշում էր տունը հայրենի Զվարաշ հայոց լեռներում Միլացիր Մայրի սպասիր ինձ և ես կգամ Ես քեզ շատ եմ սիրում Կարոտել եմ իմ մայրի Ես հիշում եմ խոսքերը քո Սիրել հողը մեր հայրենի Ես հիշում եմ արցունքները քո Երբ պատմում էիր ջարդերի մասին Ես հիշում եմ տունը մեր բակի Բարդին ծերացած Ես հիշում եմ խոխոջն արվակի ու մանկական խաղերս անցած ու լսվեց հրաման մի որոտը ղրդած ծանր արկերի տակ հողը դնկած ձեռքին հրացան նամակը ծոցումպած տղան առաջ նետվեց ատամները սեղմած պետք էր անցնել ընդամենը 100 լոկարյուր կար հայրենի հողից բայց իշքան կարճ են քայլերը խաղաղ Եվ իշքան երկար դաշտում այս կռվի ու հանկարծ կարծես լռեց ամեն ինչ տղան հնձված հասկի պես ընկավ ձեռքերում սեղմած նամակը ծակված հայացք ուղղած կապույտ երկնքի նա նայում էր կապույտ երկնքի Հիշում է տունը հայրենի ու բակի բարդին ծերացած որի տակ մայրը կսպասի նամակին Արևն արդեն մոտեցել էր մայրամուտին Դաշտում անմեղ լռություն էր տիրում ու միայն մահամերձ հանգած հայորդին հայոց լեռների երկներ երկում թրջել